All right. Thank you so much for joining us at the very first Psychedelic Science Expo put on by Mace Media and the CBD Tour. I'm pretty excited. Okay. Cannabis people yell and shout and clap. I would expect that psychedelics people could. Thank you, Propane Jane. Before I let the smartest people in the room talk, you and I will have a conversation. We'll just forget about them for a second. How many people in here have an interest in cultivating mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms? Okay, the AV guy's got his hand way up. He's like, I'm getting paid to be here. This is unbelievable. This is so much better than the Hotel Beverage Association conference. Okay, so everybody is interested. How many people are currently cultivating mushrooms, hypothetically? Okay, so like half of you have already jumped in. How many people are currently successfully? All right. You know what? God bless you for both your confidence and your awareness of your own limitations. So I love this panel. And obviously they're going to speak for themselves, and I'm going to shut up here pretty quick. But if you kind of go from right here on down, you see a spectrum of the life of fungus, starting with genetics, breeding, isolating strains, creating strains, important technical work, cultivation that sort of bridges that, genetics work here in the middle with Dacia, and then lots of cultivation work with LaRell. So you see this progression in the life of these amazing, not plants, not animals. And I can't wait to have the conversation. So please help me welcome my panelists today. That's when you clap. Yep. And I'm going to start, because I got to start ladies first. So I'm going to start with LaRell and come back down this way. And could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. My name's LaRell. I'm from Colorado Springs. I grew up as a Mormon. That's an interesting part of my history, which plays a very interesting role in my life now, having got away from that and into what I'm into now. And I spent a lot of my life driving truck. I got my commercial helicopter pilot's license. Obviously, I'm a trans woman. That is another huge part of my life and existence. And got into mushrooms, learned how to cultivate the mushrooms, and learned real quick how important it was to educate people on how to do it properly, educate people on proper use of the medicine. And so that's my main focus now, is education of cultivation.
Thank you. Dacia.
My name is Dacia Boehning. I'm a cannabis professional, and I specialize in the extraction of cannabis concentrates. But I also am a mushroom cultivar, and in that I kind of specialize in helping people develop protocols for microdosing and give them the tools and the mushrooms they need to do that pro bono.
I'm Dom A., otherwise known as Doma by some of my peers out there.
The legend.
I'm founder of Magic Myco, as well as Myco Coil, which is a new sterilizer tool that I just patented. And I'm a genetics breeder. I'm also a cultivator. I also I teach people online. I'm an entrepreneur, and my main thing is the genetics and genetic splicing.
So
isolations.
I want to start right there. I want to start with genetics.
We're also the winner of the first psilocybin cup.
Woo! Okay.
Title.
Okay. Pretend like you didn't just hear that, because I had a whole thing planned around that, and I'm going to go with it. Okay. I was watching the work that Reggie from Oakland Hi-Fi is doing unbelievable work lifting up this space, lifting up the community, lifting up this industry, highly focused on testing. He put together the very first ever psilocybin cup. The only criteria was potency, psilocybin and psilocin potency. Doma won for his strain that he designed, engineered, bred.
Yes.
Okay, that. See, it's not a plant. It's not an animal. It's weird to talk about. So I reserve the right to be corrected at any moment. But he bred Tidal Wave, submitted that. His psilocybin results weren't just a little higher than the next closest one. It was like 30% higher than the next closest one. So it's kind of a historic thing. And I'm super excited. So let's hear it for Myco Magic and Tidal Wave.
Thank you.
On that, LaRell, you cultivate for therapeutic use. So you work closely with a psychedelic assisted therapist and you're cultivating specifically for that use. Tell me about adopting a new strain. So when somebody like Doma says, I've got this new strain I want you to try, what are some of the things that you need to think about before you decide whether or not you even want to cultivate that new strain?
For one, I want to have an understanding of what its potency is, so I know when I'm administering it, or when someone who is administering it to someone has an understanding of how it's going to affect them. And if I'm looking for a new strain to cultivate, I want something that is going to be reliable, that's going to colonize quickly, have a quick turnaround time, because I have cultivated some strains that take 2 months to start pinning, and they're not really worth your time to mess with sometimes, depending on what the outcome is you're after. If you just want to produce the medicine and you need to produce it reliably and fast, then I want a strain that's going to produce well, reliably.
Dacia, you work closely with Doma, and you're kind of the middle of this breeding cultivation. You're sort of you're the place where all the colors come together in the ombre, and it's a special place. So how do you, as you're providing feedback to Doma, what are some of the criteria you use to say, like, this strain doesn't feel stable, isn't performing right? How do we optimize? What is your role there? How do you provide feedback?
Well, I think that, first of all, I'm really fortunate in that Doma's provided all of us that are in his classes a platform. So we have a platform where we can talk about absolutely everything from start to finish. From the growing, we get the genetics or the strains, and everybody does it differently.
There, that's my girl.
And so in the classroom with all of the people, we use different substrates, we use different strains. We use the same strains and we change it up. We have all different processes. And so it's almost like a business incubator, where you have different, everybody trying to do the same thing, but in all their different ways. So really, we have a lot of data, and it's just getting better and more structured each month that goes by with each project. So I'm really fortunate to have that.
So you get a lot of feedback. There's a lot of work going on, so you get a lot of feedback.
And a lot of sharing, and it's really open, and nobody is, that IT joke where IT people like to keep all that information to themselves, right? And they don't like to share how they fix anything, but it's the opposite. Everybody there is really open and really close, and they share everything. So I'm just really lucky that way.
Tell me about Doma. Tell me about creating a community like that. What is part of creating that community? Obviously, you started out wanting to educate people, but talk to me about what that's like as that's grown.
Can I just reference one thing?
Absolutely.
That does provide me a lot of valuable feedback, having the team and also the community out there who grows my strains, and I see how it's performing for them under a various range of conditions, and I see that it's working out for them. But also that's why the testing is so important, because of the numbers and its actual hard data, and that's what we really need. We need both. We need people testing in the community like we have, and the community growing it and the testing both as well. So,
Talk to me about some of the challenges around testing.
some of the challenges around testing. Well, right now, there's not a lot of it going on, and it's very expensive.
Okay, so it's two things. You can't find a test lab who has the standards to test what you want. You can't send it to somebody because they probably won't receive it if they're a lab. You know what I mean? There's all the problems of what you're handling. And those tests are expensive when you purchase them, if you can find a lab. And then getting yourself set up to be your own lab is expensive and requires training, requires maintenance, requires very expensive inputs and consumables. So it's a whole project in and of itself.
That's what's so great about the community is different people have different niches, and they have different fields and different things. Like one person can't do everything. That's impossible. Like I like sticking to the genetics side. Then I have my team out there does the cultivation. We got people like Oakland Hyphae out in Oakland who are doing the testing.
Yeah.
And we all come together as a community, and that's the way it should be. That's the way we should keep it.
Do you think in 2 years, the single metric for the 3rd annual psilocybin cup, do you think the single metric will be potency, or do you think that there'll be more metrics?
I think there'll be more metrics. I think there'll be more alkaloids, beta-carboline contents, MAIO. There'll be more in-depth reports for sure. And also, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Dacia, what are you making a note of over there?
Oh, a couple of things. I was making notes earlier on the testing side. I think one of the biggest obstacles to the testing is that there's no way to test it. And until Oakland Hyphae opened up their lab.
We're just like this.
Sorry.
You can make it closer to your closer.
right.
Be comfortable with it. Everybody has all the time in the world for that.
Right.
For real.
Before Oakland Hyphae, there was no place to send your strains and get that information. And so, and it takes bravery too, because then you have, right now, underground cultivators have to step out into the light and expose themselves in order to start gathering this data. And that's gonna change over time. And it's really important, like you said, for using it in therapy, you need consistency. And consistency is really hard right now. But, and the biggest part is just, there's nobody to do it.
And
so
so
it's just starting.
honestly,
This is the time to get in.
business idea.
Yeah, we need more
You heard
labs.
it here first. Business idea. But this is really interesting because I feel like with a lot of these conversations, it just is recalling things we talked about. But as I was encouraging LaRell to join us here today, and to maybe be in front of everybody, which maybe is some people's favorite thing and not some other people's favorite thing. But as I was bothering LaRell about this, she's like, cool your shit. And she didn't say that. She was very polite. But she's like, I don't even know if I should be up there with my face. Like, do I want to go into public, into a place where sure, if somebody's not here from the federal government, I'll buy the first round tonight. But if Adam raises a hand in the back. So, but LaRell, speak to the conversations we had and like the ruminations you did about, do I want to go somewhere and get on a stage and say that I'm doing this?
I find it, first of all, completely ridiculous that anybody on this planet thinks they have any right whatsoever to regulate something that grows from the ground.
Thank you.
Amen.
Just stop right there. Just in that.
When you look at it from that basis, that there is no basis to regulate this. It's something that grows naturally, that nobody ever had any right to even touch it in the first place. But it really sucks to be behind something that has so much power. There is so much power behind psilocybin and the ability to help people in ways that no other substance can. It has a therapeutic value that is so incredible. And there are so many people out there that could benefit from this if they could have access to it, if only they could have the easy access to it. And the problem about easy access is if we start to make it to where there is easy access, then more people take notice of it. Corporations get a hold of it. We commercialize it. And I don't want to see that happen. But as far as the safety of it goes, it sucks that we have to be so careful right now with something that is so beneficial and is so natural. And we should be able to give it to the people who need it. Mm-hmm. It should be accessible. Mm-hmm. And we shouldn't have to worry about our own freedoms just to provide people the medicine that they need that is so beneficial.
Preach, girl. Preach. That's so true. Dacia, you were making a note. What were you thinking?
I was going to say, she touched on accessibility, and I think that's another issue, you know, and I don't want to get into it, but I'm just saying it's another obstacle, going from, you know, genetics that are consistent, so we can then use them for therapy, but also then accessibility. And, you know, I only speak of it because I keep what I do very small. I produce just enough for my family, and then the community of people that I've attached myself to or have come to me, which is just under 30 people. And I keep it free on purpose. I just do what I can afford to do for accessibility, because a lot of these people wouldn't be able to afford to go to a dispensary for mushrooms and pay, you know, like $100 a month to microdose.
Right, right.
So that's another big fear going forward is accessibility.
We touched a little bit on, you know, the progression of the industry. And Doma, I want you to speak about something that at first I think gives people the heebie-jeebies. So when you and I were first talking and, you know, free the plant, love the plant, everybody needs to be on mushrooms, and you said, I'm going to patent this strain, I was like, GW Pharma, what are you talking about right now? I'm not having it. And, you know, just like I'm coming from a place of cannabis where mother truckers are coming in and trying to like pick up this stuff and make it corporate, and it's stinky pants. But I don't think that that's what you have in mind. So based on that really flattering introduction, tell me about what it looks like when somebody patents a strain. What does that look like, and how is that not some weird Monsanto thing that I don't want any part of?
The only strain that I'm aware of that's patented right now is cubensis by Paul Stamets. But substrains are not. And that is because of the testing. If you go to test any substrain cubensis on a PCR, it'll come back as cubensis. There's just not enough data attached to tell the differences. Now, if you can find and afford a place to run full genome sequencing on all your work, or the main ones that you want to go with, now you're talking millions of pieces of data. And I mean, you can have isolations that can be very stable and consistently come up with very few of those differentiated
What
points.
is the advantage to you?
And then you could patent it.
Okay, and then when you patent it, what does that mean? Explain it. Help me understand what that means.
Well, see, the thing is once you give somebody your seeds, or your, because this is cubensis and cannabis show, right? So once you have seeds or from fungi spores, once you give somebody your work or a clone or an isolation, that's it. They have your work. They have everything that you worked really hard for, and you just handed it over to them, and they could just fruit it off agar with no nutrients, get one mushroom and send it in and win. So that's what's so important to me about the results of this, is not that we won, it's the numbers, the research, the data that we're getting back slowly. Now we're starting to get data back, and we want to do it for all our strains, but also because the validation of the work that I've done for the past 45 years. I feel that it really showed through on this one. So even, you know, there's going to be a lot of testing going on now, and you know, everybody's going to be prepared for all the next competitions and shows and everything like that. So everybody's going to up their game and bring it, you know. So yeah, it's an exciting time to get into mushrooms for sure, because it's going to go fast.
Yeah, it is going to go fast. Dacia, what were you thinking?
I'm just, I have to agree with Doma here. I think that people forget and sometimes get really panicky in the beginning when things are big and they're about to get big, that there's enough success out there for everybody.
Yeah.
There's money out there for everybody. And but it's important when you have scientists who've been working for years and years on a project, something specific, they need a way to get credit for it, and some sort of monetary, you know, a way to make money off of it. And I think that in doing this, there's also then the data. You can start gathering that data, and it's an important part of the process for consistency in numbers and treatment and actually just using that medicine. It doesn't keep people from using the medicine. It just gives, a way to track the data, who it came from, where it came from. And so I think it's okay, and that it's an important part of the process. It doesn't mean it's going to derail like the cannabis train derailed in a way that it's not accessible to a lot of people still, and there's still a lot of people suffering and being imprisoned and for something that corporations are making a shit ton of money for.
Ooh, cannabis. We're doing that.
But I think that Doma's correct, and that if he's been spending all of his time and years, resources, his own funds.
No, I don't. I'm opening up the conversation.
Sure.
Because I myself had a knee-jerk reaction to the idea, and it didn't jive in my mind with everything I've seen from you. Because in my mind, it felt like the way people were taking advantage of cannabis, and I wasn't seeing it as a way for you to quantify your work. That this genetic sequence is the work that I've done. And that is my work product, and other people can grow it, but that's my work product. So, that's about, I just feel really strongly about having the conversation. And I think that having an answer, I'm probably not, when you guys hear about patenting a strain, am I crazy? Or did you think what I was thinking? Okay. Do you hear what Doma's saying? And does that give you a different sense about it? About his intellectual property and what he's doing? Okay. Coleman?
Well, I think there's a big differentiation between domesticating a strain, going through your isolation process and putting it in real work, and then sitting on it trying to, collapse the doors and let no one in. And there's another thing to be said for having a patent and then releasing it. So you're able to ensure that that kind of thing doesn't happen, that these monarchs don't come over and just grab it up and then put it on the back shelf so they can either have their one strain that they did their work on and force that into the limelight and crush everything else, or just pull over it to begin with. And so, there is. And
True.
I do understand.
If that's your goal, you should wait.
Yeah.
If that's your goal, you should wait and not give us more.
Yeah. Doma, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking about honestly, I'm thinking about making new strains. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm thinking about making new strains. Okay, when you make a strain, are you making it for the way it grows or the way it makes me feel, or both?
I am just looking for the characteristics that I desire.
Well, part of that should be the way it makes me feel. More people should be structuring their work over how it makes me feel.
Which part
frankly.
of my desire is the way it makes you feel and the
Thank
potency.
you. Just a part. But how do you, because there's different, okay, we've got psilocybin consumers in the room. I see a few. I know you. Okay. Different strains. You notice different feelings from different strains. Lots of nodding. Are you in a position, by a show of hands, who has easy access to psilocybin right now? All you want, you can get it. It's not a problem.
Everyone.
Okay. The camera's got that? No, just kidding. Who has the kind of access that's strain specific? Wow. Show-offs. Who knows the psilocybin and psilocin? Okay. All you Magic Myco t-shirts, you quit raising y'all's hands. Who has the kind of access where you see a COA or test results for psilocybin and psilocin content? Right. That was nobody, Dacia. So Dacia, how do we know as a consumer? How do I know what I'm getting? For me personally, I know my cultivator.
Sure.
I'm not pointing at anybody. I didn't mean to point at anybody, but I know my cultivator. I know from whence that came. I don't always know the strain.
I think that's changing right now. I think that in the past it was, a plastic baggie that you get from someone who gave it to them, and it could have been sitting around for a year and a half. And we all know that psilocybin and
Not in my
psilocin
house.
degrade greatly over time and in sunshine and other
Yeah.
things. So you couldn't have consistency, and you couldn't, medicate with it or do anything of value with it aside from try to trip and be successful or unsuccessful, and that even is bad. When you're just trying to recreationally use it and it's not consistent, can be a bad trip. So I think that that's changing with the testing, with people being able to document the genetics that they've been working on, for traceability and other reasons. And I think that, as long as we keep certain things in mind, like making sure that everyone can access it in some way, and you have people that really care about it, and will continue to care about it. And we have to let everybody just do it their own way, and
Yeah.
But I think that what Doma does is important, because that's how we're going to get actual numbers.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. That's why I release everything. I just released everything. I want it. It's
And
for everybody.
he's always been very
It's for
open with
everybody.
all his work, giving it away and sharing it. And
Well, and the classes build that platform, don't they? I mean, once you have one spore, you have unlimited mushrooms forever, right? So the testing business, yes. Maybe the spore business is, I don't know, unless you're a breeder, because it's the breeding is different. Creating spores, I mean,
There's lots of substrate companies.
yeah,
popping up,
substrate accessories.
A lot of gear. People with selling totes. I mean, you name it. Filters, everything. You can find something.
LaRell, how engaged are people who follow you on Instagram? LARELL, look her up, LaRell H. Follow you on Instagram. People want to learn how do you continue to make cultivation accessible for people who want to learn how to do it? Woo!
Yeah. Well, I use YouTube a lot. I have YouTube videos, and Instagram, I get a lot of engagement because this right now is such a movement. There are so many people interested in doing this themselves in their closet, in their bedroom, and everybody wants to know how. And I'm learning that education is such a key piece to this whole thing right now, getting more and more people educated on how to do it properly. And I am finding so much engagement, just constantly questions of, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I make this happen? I get pictures all the time. What's happening here in my tub? Can you identify this mold for me? So it's quite a fascinating position to be in at this time in this world with the interest.
Doma, how many classes can you count how many workshops you've had or classes you've had?
Workshops, we've only had a few. I mean, we're on there every day. We have monthly projects that we do. Sometimes they take months to do, but we get a new one every month, which is fun. We're really getting into a groove with that now, where like every month we're all doing the same project and testing together, research together, which is amazing, having like 30, 40, 50 people all doing the same thing instead of just yourself.
Okay, so tell us more about that. Pretend like I'm not completely understanding it. So you have an online platform.
It's Patreon subscription.
Okay.
There's various tiers, and the top 3 tiers are all part of that projects and Discord. And I make art and send it out, and nice slides you can look at under the microscope.
But so you're all on the same substrate with the same spores, starting the same day.
Yes, I mean there's different level tiers, so some people get a little more than others, maybe, And we also have rewards program that we're implementing now. It's actually built on blockchain.
MagicMyco.com.
No, actually, it's MycoCoin.
MycoCoin. Okay.
So I don't think we're all actually using the same substrate.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Okay.
No, we're all doing different. Everybody's doing it a little different.
Everybody's doing it their own way, but it's the same spores. It's the same strain.
The same genetics.
Same genetics. And then at the end, tell me what the testing is like.
Oh, it's really a project that we just started doing, but I mean, it's been great. They send me back spore prints and clean spore prints that I could use, and we find the good stuff. We eliminate the bad. this is great, this isn't, maybe we should stick with this. As far as like the different, we're just mainly testing genetics, and everybody's doing it differently, and that's how we're finding different data on different varying factors like substrates and environments. And I find water to be a huge part of everything.
Water quantity, quality,
Everything about it, the charge, the pH.
all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Patreon subscribers probably know what that pH is supposed to be too. I want to open up for some questions and see where that leads us. Does anybody have a burning question for our panel? Talking about genetics, talking about cultivation. Is there something you want to know? Yes, sir.
I know you mentioned that testing would probably be a good side of business to get on as opposed to like sports or whatever.
Your spores are a great business if you're a genetics guy, but I wouldn't be reselling somebody's spores. That's just me.
I guess my question was also, what is the current active, successful methods of testing to decide or potency or any kind of testing that mushrooms go through?
So it'd be HPLC.
HPLC, liquid chromatography. Yeah.
And the challenges around that. I mean, it would be short-sighted maybe to start a testing business that's just for psilocybin and psilocin. I mean, probably the smart move would be a cannabis testing that expands.
That's the most concrete data, and it comes back with the most amount of data. I mean, there's like things you could do at home, like on the cheap to see, like, how you weigh your starting against your, crystals that you get at the end, and then you could do some math and figure out maybe what your psilocybin content is.
So it would
psilocin is what we get high off of. Psilocybin converts to psilocin in the body. That's why some of these numbers with the high psilocin count, so think about it. Your body doesn't have to work. Your liver doesn't have to work so much. It's going to go right through the blood-brain barrier and go right to your head.
Mm-hmm. So there are things, and we're only currently testing for 2 things in the mushrooms. And so that's why I'm saying, next year we're going to be testing for 5 years. The year after that, we're testing for 5 things, for 15 things. I think, Dacia, do you think we're going to just be finding out what are the other alkaloid contents?
I think that's important. There's another thing I want to mention about the HPLC quickly to close that up. And I just want to say that right now it's almost not accessible. You have companies that do it for the cannabis industry, and they do it. It's not affordable. Most of the people, cultivators of mushrooms, are everyday people, moms, therapists, and they don't have money to get HPLC tested. And right now with the cannabis industry, it's $10,000 a pop to get the cannabis tested. And that's not affordable. But you have a new company, Oakland Hyphae and Hyphae Labs.
$100.
Yeah. Who have made it accessible. They put it on a sliding scale, and really their top dollar was $150 to get it tested.
Fantastic.
But then they even brought that down even further for people who had nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think in the beginning we need more of that. And it's just a beautiful community, again, the mushroom community, where you see a need, you open it up, and you just make it happen because it needs to happen. We need to get that tested. But I also I forgot what the second thing was because I wanted to close that up. But
Think about it while Coleman's asking a question.
Think about it.
You think about it and tell me.
I never go on tangents.
Never.
I specifically wanted to talk about some of the techniques that you use for isolation, or not just isolation, rather, but the combination of genetic material. I don't know if it was the blue scaria, it was the tidal wave, it was the penis. One of them, I remember hearing stories about the use of. Sometimes there's. Could you be using these words wrong, but like a haploid clamping onto an already established mycelium net to get some genetic exchange there, as well as breaking some of those barriers with rattlesnake venom?
The rattlesnake venom thing, I think, is a total myth. I don't know who made that up. And if they do it, I would really love to see it. Please call me up. I use special antibiotic agar that makes it grow slow and in place. It breaks down that cell wall, so anastomosis can happen. Now, anastomosis, when spores drop, it happens everywhere. You get thousands of new strains without even trying. It's right there. So what we do is we do it in a very educated guess kind of way, where it's like we know exactly what we're doing, and we isolate to the point of monoculture and then fuse them on special agar And then we finish it off in LC after that for a while before it even gets tested. Or we test it on agar first to see the fruiting capabilities. We fruit it right off on agar. Doesn't need any other nutrients, and it'll fruit. So if you want your stuff to stay 0.00, make sure it's in sterile water, nothing else.
So how many people completely understood everything that Doma just said about isolating a strain?
That was brief.
You want a little? That was really quick. Okay,
We're
I got
gonna
a
get
couple
into
hands.
that tomorrow. And
I got a couple hands, but I'm gonna say it back in the way that I understand it, and then you're gonna correct where I mess up. Is this gonna happen?
Go ahead.
Okay, there's gonna be wrong things.
I'm ready. Bring it
There's
on.
gonna be wrong things. So we're gonna we have mycelium. So you guys have all seen agar plates that are all the like pretty little stringy things, and you see the little punch in the middle, and then it all goes out. He's gonna put 2 of those on the same plate in a kind of agar. See, I already wrong. Did you see I like this? It's okay. He's tracking. In a kind of agar that's going to cause the cell walls to break down so that when those strands kind of go over each other, they can mix together.
Correct. That is absolutely correct.
Correct.
However,
Absolutely correct.
I mean, you can go to page 27, Mushroom Cultivator book by Paul Stamets, and you see he puts 4 multispores on a plate and see what happens. Some spots they're going to cross. You got to watch the way it fruits, and then if something different comes out, it is because you say it is by the looks, and then you clone it, and then you say that's your new thing. That's not really the right way to do it.
Well, it's the method I use. So I mean,
But then again, there is no right or wrong way to do this. There is so many different ways, and we've experimented with different things. We've with single spores, like you would do with plants. I guess you would take seeds and let them pollinate each other, and then you got to grow that, and then take those seeds. Or you could get clones and graft them together. Okay, it's very, very similar, even though it's totally different because of the Basidio microta. It's a basidiospore, so that means for each basidia there are 4 spores, and not all of them are compatible. Some of them will mate, but they'll be illegitimate matings, and they won't even be able to fruit. So when you
did you
do
guys
it,
know that all this was happening with spores? Was all of this on your radar?
and we're going to get into
the
this
4
tomorrow.
spores and the compatibility. It's a lot.
So if you can do it from spore, but it's not a very reliable way. What we like to do is we like to isolate, clone, find a thing that we already know, that we already like, and then we'll segment that to the point of monoculture. I think the word monoculture and monokaryon is very often confused. A monoculture can be dikaryotic. That's why it fruits so nice. Otherwise, it wouldn't.
Could you define monokaryotic and dikaryotic?
Monokaryotic is primary mycelium, and it doesn't fruit on its own. It needs a mate. And once it gets together with another monokaryotic strain, it'll create a dikaryon. And those dicaryons are what will fruit for you. So that's what you want to go with. And the easiest way to get to like great isolations is clone like the greatest thing that you like. You clone it and then work from your clones. And there's ways to splice that and to, like I said, polish it off in LC, which grows in 3D, right? Because agar is on a 2-dimensional surface.
LC?
Liquid culture.
Everybody okay?
LI is liquid inoculant, which is sterile water. LC is liquid culture, which has nutrients in it, so it will grow inside.
That's the one that you put in the Uncle Ben's bag.
You can
So
take
like-
agar, you can take scrapings, or even throw a non-contaminated agar sample in like an Etterbach machine or a blender with sterile water and make syringes that'll test 0.00.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people know that yet.
Mm-hmm. LaRell, does this make you want to go home and grow more strains?
It does.
It does, doesn't it? It does.
Yeah.
Have you ever cultivated tidal wave?
No.
Do you want to? I know a guy.
I'm fascinated now.
Yeah. Tell me what it makes you, what you're thinking about. I just see you back there nodding, and I want to hear what's happening.
Every time I have cultivated a new strain, it's always fascinating to learn it and to get to know it. And the fascinating thing is, as Doma is very experienced with, you can have the same strain that will grow very, very different depending on how it's isolated, what you've done to it. And so someone will give you a strain and say, yeah, this produces great full flushes every time, but depending on how you actually cultivate it and what love you give to it depends on what's actually going to happen with it. But yeah, it's fun experimenting with different ones.
What do you think, Dacia?
I just remembered what I was going to talk about before, and she reminded me, because it was about something she said before, that people who are looking to grow it consistently always look for time, and we do. There are strains that we have, Trinity being one of them, Tidal Wave, and where we focus on how long does it take to fruit. Because time and the turnover of your batches is really important. It's not just consistency or the potency. If the potency is lower, you would just then increase your dosage. As long as the dose is, the potency is consistent throughout. Then the next big thing is how long does it take? So time is important. A Tidal Wave 4, you said also, a very quick to colonize and to fruit. And I think that's really important when you're just trying, because you have patients. You have people that are waiting for the medicine a certain amount, whether it be you give them enough for a month or whatever. And so you have to be able to fill all of that and to be able to, and so you need consistency in the time it takes to. And so that's what I wanted to say. And another important reason to do the research and the testing and to create strains and think about what are we trying to do with this strain is about time too, especially when used, not so much commercially, but in the treatment of.
Can I follow up on that?
Please.
Yeah, so like the Tidal Wave 2 that won the competition, it was grown on manure-based nutrients in the substrate, and it won, obviously. The Tidal Wave 4, which is also a tidal wave isolation, came in around 10th place, but it was only grown on core, no nutrients. The Trinity, which is usually very strong, also was grown on just core. So like a great, and to her point, the one that won takes 60 days to make the fruit that won the competition. I had 3 flushes of Tidal Wave 4 in that time, which gave me like, I'm guessing 10 times the amount. And it's right there, it's right up there. It was fruit on just core. I'd be very curious to, as a test in the next psilocybin cup, I'd have the guts to just do the TW2 on just core and the Trinity and the TW4 on a manure-based one and see what the difference is.
You know that you are really, really good at your job when you enter cups with experiments, because you just
I would
wanna
like
know
to do
how
this
it
on the
turns
side
out.
for
Like,
$100 a pop.
You
but-
just like, maybe next time I'll do it like this and see if it's all right.
I want to submit
Like,
all of
that's
them on
confidence.
the side.
That is confidence in your work, and
But I
like
will
it.
do that because he hasn't answered me yet, so yes.
We have any other questions in here? I don't want to ignore people. Yes, my friend right here.
When you talk about stepping out into the community briefly, how we view it should happen, what are some of the signs of it's the appropriate time, besides what's going on now? Like, what makes you a little more confident to come out with your face in the community at this time?
That's a good question. I guess the timing, it's just the timing. Marijuana just went legal in New York. And I don't know. I just think it's the right time. I mean, we gone through a lot in the past 4 years. Rather not talk about much of it, but I thought that this was important enough to come out and show my face to move the movement forward so that you guys can see exactly what's going on, because it's about
I think that
it's
word's
about us.
important too. It's a movement. There's
It's a
momentum
move-
here,
Yeah.
you know, and I think
And
that's
we're trying to
part
push
of
it forward. So we know there's risks.
And so there's a gamble, right? Is there enough momentum where you can come out and start sharing this information and the people who are doing it, and without getting, put in prison. But we're just hoping that there's enough momentum right now.
LaRell.
Yeah, I feel like we're at a place where there's enough people in the world that are recognizing that it is actually beneficial. Those with money still stand in a place to try to protect their money and their ability to make more money, and those are probably going to be our biggest enemies here. The government, they're a big enemy, but those with money are the number one enemy. And I I think education, like I say, is so key. Just to educate people on what it really is, and getting out there in the community and teaching people what it is. There are so many people out there that just simply don't even know what psychedelics do, and simply just having a conversation with your friend about them opens their mind. They talk with someone else. Next thing you know, they're trying it themselves and getting personal experience. And then the more people who get personal experience and understand what this really is, the better chance we're going to have.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think that the conversation's really important. Conversation with people, because what do we think about with psychedelics? You know, you think of college students and experimentation and going too far and excess and just putting as much in your body as you can and seeing what happens. And you want to see aliens and travel to other planets. And
this is how moms think about their kids doing psychedelics. Like she's reading my mail right now.
And I think it's important. I think it's important to start having the conversation with kids too, because there's a big difference between cannabis and mushrooms. As opposed to meth and crack and other, things. So if we start to differentiate and create a new language, drugs, and take it out of the category of drugs and put it into its own category, maybe make up new words if we have to. I had this conversation before with Anthony about we need to start changing the words a little bit, and meaning instead of saying it's psychoactive or if it's not psychoactive, CBD and THC, and use intoxicating, because even CBD is psychoactive in that you have a change.
Makes you feel good.
Exactly. You get that euphoric, I feel well, that general feeling of wellness. And so we just need to change, psychedelics and all the words and the meanings behind them, and just start making new language for it and talking about it, because talking about it with your kids, talking about it with your coworkers and friends, and that's part of the momentum, I think.
Doma.
Yeah, and a lot of people are looking for help right now. A lot of people are having drug problems, trauma, you name it, opiate addiction. A lot of people are looking towards the psychedelics now. Even just to get into the hobby is very therapeutic for some people, just to grow itself, to watch the cycles, to read the moon and the stars in your work, and it's really amazing. And I think people are sick of big government, coming out with a pill for every ailment and oppressing us and giving us stuff that we don't need, bottles and bottles of stuff that we don't need, when something that grows out of the ground that we enjoy growing, that makes us happy to just even be around it, in the same room with it as you're doing it, and it's successful and you see it, your baby coming to life. It's like...
Can anybody relate to that? Okay, there you are.
It's highly therapeutic in itself, and a lot of people have problems right now, and they're looking for healing and they're looking for help, whether it's drugs or mental issues or accident or trauma. And this is the time. So that's why we're here.
I think that is a beautiful place to begin to wrap up the conversation. And I know that folks here are going to want to be in touch with you. So I'll start ladies first again. LaRell, would you tell everybody how to be in touch with you?
Trying to think the best way. Probably my Instagram account, Mycelium Queen, is where I educate people.
That's where I hang out and watch you. So join us.
It's Mycelium Queen.
LaRell, thank you so much for being here. Dacia?
I'm the same right now. Instagram is really the only way to get in touch with me, and I'm the Fungus Bunker.
The Fungus Bunker.
My kids gave me that name.
Mm-hmm. Go, Mama.
Magic Myco, at Magic Myco. MagicMyco.com, Magic Myco on IG, Magic Myco on Patreon. You could also email me at Doma at magicmyco.com. I always respond to them emails.
Take this
Somebody has a
opportunity.
question over there.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, magicmyco.com.
Magic Myco,
Magic,
M-Y-C-O.
M-Y-C-O.
Magic.
Doma, D-O-M-A at magicmyco.com. Enjoy.
Instagram's a great place. Watch what they're doing. I just want to appreciate you. I want to appreciate
Thank you. I
you.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate
Doma and
everybody.
his team and Dacia traveled from New York to be here with us. It was no small feat. It was on very short notice, and their moderator's not as organized as she should be. So they've been through a lot just to get here, and it blesses my socks off, because I'm gonna say 5 years from now, when we're at Psilocybin Biz in Vegas and it's the biggest show on the planet, I'm going to say, remember when we were at that panel with the first ever winner of the first ever Psilocybin Cup? So I just want to honor you guys for being here and the work that you're doing and the work that you continue to do.
Thank you for
And
having us.
I wish you all prosperity and good health. And I just want to appreciate you, and I bet you guys all do too. So let's say thank you.
Thank you.